Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Alder Hour. Now, as some of you may have noticed, it's a holiday today in the US, and it's also a holiday today in the UK. So we're not actually working. What we've done is we've got this short pre-recorded episode for you, so you have something to watch on catch up or something to watch if you happen to be on LinkedIn or YouTube roundabout now. A couple of weeks ago, I recorded an interview with John Federman at Unleash, who is the CEO of HireRoad. And we spent some time on their booth talking to various people, but I had a great conversation with him, and I'm really excited to share it with you. Hi, John. Great to be talking to you. Could you just introduce yourself and tell everyone who's watching who you are and what you do?
Sure. Happy to do so. I'm John Federman. I'm the CEO of HireRoad.
Fantastic. So tell us a bit more about HireRoad and what it does and why you're here.
Sure. HireRoad is basically an amalgamation of companies pulled together that include ATS, that include Learn, Onboard, and most specifically, our people analytics tool called People Insight.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and tell us a bit more about People Insight.
Sure. People Insight is a tool that allows folks to understand the levers of their human resource data. How do you be strategic with it? How do you understand things like your succession plan and your DEI strategy? And how do you understand what recruiters are most efficient and why? And where you can improve the efficiency of what you do as an organization with, as cliche as it sounds, your most important asset, which is your people.
And where's the sort of the level of sophistication and adoption with the people that you work with, that you try to work with, in terms of that kind of approach and those kind of metrics? Because traditionally recruiting especially has been focused on some very narrow performance-based stuff. Is the world kind of opening up and actually embracing the power of data in the same way that other parts of the enterprise do?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a few things at play. One is that every organization, every department within an organization has become data-driven over time.
Yeah.
The sales organization, the marketing organization, the product organization. The last holdout, if you will, has been the human resource organization.
Yeah.
And that's for any number of reasons. Because it's, you kind of feed from within, last in line, if you will. And what we're seeing is that there has been a huge swell of awareness and appreciation of the role of data.
Yeah.
How does that become a strategic tool for people operations? And like anything, it started at your biggest organizations first.
Yeah.
Where when I define biggest organizations, I mean those less than 1% that have tens and tens of thousands of employees. And those organizations really paved the way for what we look at now as a democratization, as an opportunity for organizations of all sizes. And when I say all sizes, excluding your small business, but when I say enterprise, let's say organizations that have 500 or more employees, where there's often multiple data sources coming out of a non-homogeneous technology stack, often driven by factors such as growth, acquisitions and mergers, bringing together disparate systems, and simple questions about how do we create the best run organization become really complex. What we found is that a lot of these organizations began to approach it on their own. Let's sit down with an Excel. Let's take a bunch of data sources. Let's get ourselves to a source of truth. And the problem is that person who does that data in February may in fact do the same exact thing in March and get data that isn't projectable, isn't scalable, and isn't consistent. And when HR professionals are looking to get a seat at the strategic table, not be what many folks refer to HR people as firefighters. There's a problem and you go and you try to solve it. How do you proactively use data as a strategic lever to understand the issues and to, in many cases, proactively address the issues?
And let's dig into that a little bit more, because
Love to.
It seems to me that right now there's just never been a more important time for the talent function to be strategic and advise the organization, particularly with, AI and the balance between that and humans and everything that's going on. What kind of shift is there from the sort of traditional metrics that an HR team might look at to the kind of things that they need to take into the C-suite to be seen as being strategic? What's the kind of difference? What's that journey look like?
Well, I think that the difference is that the world we live in is changing so quickly. If we were to have this conversation 2 years ago, DEI would have been probably the first thing we spoke about.
Yeah.
And in the climate that we're in right now, we're finding that the C-suite is less focused on DEI.
Yeah.
Does it mean it's not important? Absolutely not. When we look at the way that, and I'm going to go back to that notion of C-suite, there is a fiduciary of how do we run an organization that is scalable? How do we run an organization that is profitable? How do we understand the trends? And I'll give you an example. We have a client who was trying to understand recruiter efficiency.
Right, okay.
And what they came to understand through the data is that not all recruiters are created equal, and in fact, they were disproportionately spending with a recruiter, but the reason they were spending more with that recruiter is because that recruiter's hires didn't last.
Oh, interesting.
They churned out.
Yeah.
So rather than suddenly viewing that recruiter as their best source, the data opened their eyes to the fact that just because we spent more with this recruiter doesn't mean they're the best. In fact, what the data showed is that they were hiring more employees through this recruiter that were ill-suited for a long tenure.
Yeah.
Another example is that it turned out through the data that there was this epiphany that an engineering lead in Brazil for a global organization was losing its employees at about the 1.5 year mark. Moreover, those employees that were churning out after 1.5 years were all reporting to the same engineering lead. And what that evidenced to the greater management wasn't that engineering lead was necessarily a bad leader, but that he wasn't well trained in how to bring an employee from a newly onboarded employee to one that would have a long-term tenure and a long-term impact. So what the data allowed them to do was proactively work with that engineering lead, give that engineering lead the awareness of the dynamic, and secondarily apply the training so that engineering lead would be able to hold on to their employees longer. The end result is we've seen the tenure from that engineering lead go up in a very dramatic way. And so, you're spending the money to onboard somebody, but now, because of the data, you've applied some incremental resources and you're holding on to those employees.
And I think that's so fascinating because in the old world, either that problem would never be spotted, or it would be, and that person would be fired and replaced. Right. And it's just really interesting at how it creates just much better solutions if you really understand the problem. So we're at Unleash, and you're here launching a new product.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, interestingly enough, we're introducing a product called People Insight Essentials.
Okay.
And let's start with our People Insight Enterprise solution, because that's the launching pad.
Yeah.
What we do different with People Insight on our enterprise is that we are designed for those organizations that I would say are not the biggest of the big, but certainly not small business, meaning the cost of running a true people analytics operation is, of course, the software.
Yeah.
But moreover, most of the software requires a staff, requires human capital, data scientists, folks that can mine the data and create the conclusions that become effective levers for strategy.
Yeah.
What we do is part of the SaaS solution is an analyst team.
Right, okay.
So when you're buying a People Insight solution, You're also getting full-time analyst support, and those analysts play the role as the extension of our customers' HR teams. They're there to prepare the teams for a board meeting. They're there to understand various initiatives, such as I described, recruiter efficiency, understanding where and how you're spending your dollars best. Even that, which was quite literally maybe 30 to 40% of the really heavy tools out there. And by the way, we have great respect for those big, powerful enterprise-level tools. They have done the evangelizing. They have done the awareness creation. And we have great deference to what they do, though it's different than what we do. And so we have found a niche with People Insight for those organizations that, are onboarding into people analytics, and it's been a very effective approach.
Fantastic.
However, what we've also found is there's a caliber or a category of organizations that's just below that, meaning they haven't yet established a line item for people analytics. They certainly don't have the human capital to support it. And so what we've introduced is People Insight Essentials. And what that is a significantly lower cost offering without an annual commitment, meaning there's no year-long contract to be signed. It's a monthly commitment, and that commitment is modest, roughly $1 per person per employee. So for $1,000 a month, you will get a byproduct of all the lessons learned, meaning what are the dashboards that 90% of our customers use? What are they? And then moreover, not only will you get those dashboards, but you'll get the recommendations. How do we put the data into use? How do we make it a tool for our organization? And part of that is creating reports that the HR team can then share with their business management. One of the challenges that the entire people analytics category has is demonstrating its efficacy to those that aren't in human resources. What can the CFO learn? What can the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, what can the head of product learn by virtue of having a better, more efficient team? How can the human capital element become one that pays for itself in a new and definable and scalable way? People Insight Essentials gives those tools, again, without assuming there's a full data scientist team, without assuming that there is a requirement yet for full-time analyst support. But you're not going to go to an organization that's got 900 employees that's spending $20,000 on an ATS and tell them, hey, you've got to now spend $50,000 on a people analytics tool. It's just not realistic. But if you can give them something that's incremental, and one of the things that we do is we walk through an ROI calculator. What would you be spending in man hours to create an Excel spreadsheet to teach you these lessons? What would you be spending in disparate systems? What we often find is that folks have analytics in their HRIS platform, but the complexity to wring value out is so much that they don't do it. So we're really excited about People Insight Essentials. It's very customer driven, because we've had an awful lot of customers come to us say, I want it, but I just don't have a line item. And this allows them on that sort of, walk, jog, run to enter the world of people analytics.
And as a final question for you, I mean, just looking around everything that's kind of going on, it's fairly obvious that we're a bit of that we're at an inflection point when it comes to, what work looks like, what HR looks like, so much kind of change going on. How do you think this is going to kind of pan out? Particularly with the sort of the data and the insights and things like that. What do you think things will look like in 2 or 3 years' time? So if we were having this conversation again in 3 years' time, what will we be talking about?
I think it's the best news for your high performers. I think it's there's nowhere to hide if you're lacking as an employee, as a leader, in certain components that drive success. So it is an accountability that I think is new, and it frankly, as I say, it's the data-driven element that every other department has lived and breathed by for an awfully long time. And this last bastion of being purely qualitative is being put to the test. People, their performance, their ability to contribute, there's data behind that. And harnessing that data makes each and every organization better run, more competitive, and better understanding of how to spend their resources.
John, thank you very much for talking to me.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed those insights there from Unleash. You can watch the Alder Hour every Monday at this time on LinkedIn or on YouTube. If you head over to purpleacornnetwork.com, you can find out more about the other great shows that they've got nearly every weekday, including the HR Morning Show, My First Job, From the Desk, and From S to Z. We'll be back this time next Monday. I'm already looking forward to it. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.